Today on Let's Talk Tactics, we're discussing a shockingly good elite choice for the Adeptus Mechanicus 9th Edition Codex, the Sicarian Infiltrators. Let's go check them out.
Anvil of War! Let's talk tactics!
Hey guys, and welcome back to Anvil of War Gaming. Today on the channel, on Let's Talk Tactics, we're discussing the Sicarian Infiltrators. These guys are one of my favorite units in the Adeptus Mechanicus line, and possibly one of my favorite units in Warhammer 40,000. Just love the models, just love their aesthetics, love how they play on the tabletop, and have included them in variations of every list I've had for all my Adeptus Mechanicus lists. Now, in 9th edition, with the new codex, they got a serious buff. I can see these guys being or making their way into most tournament lists for players, just with the sheer amount of synergies and stratagem support that they got. And we're going to dive into that all today. Before I get into the video, though, I do want to do a quick reminder. If you're enjoying our content, hit that subscribe button, support the channel, let us know you're enjoying our content. We'll continue to make more. In addition to this, if you want to support the channel, you can do so by supporting our sponsors over at Red Dragon in Ottawa, Ontario. And there's a link to their web store in the video description below. Now, we get into the unit. And we got to start somewhere, and we're going to start with their statistics. So these guys have a movement of 8 inches. They have a weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, a strength of 4, toughness 3, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, a leadership of 6, and a save of 4+. The Princeps goes up to 3 attacks and a leadership of 7. Leadership of 7, I mean, that might be something to take into consideration when you're thinking about your unit size, but these guys can be taken in squads of 5 to 10 models, and what you really want to get out of these guys is really going to determine how big of a squad you're going to take on the tabletop. Obviously, if you're going to be pumping a lot of stratagems and a lot of synergies into these guys, you want a bigger squad to maximize that effect. They have several special rules. They have the Enhanced Bionic special rule, which gives them a 5+ invuln. They have the Neurostatic interference aura. Essentially what this states is that attacks, now it does not specify if melee or range, if they're targeted by an attack within 12 inches, basically the unit targeting can't reroll hits or wound rolls on those attacks. Pretty strong, kind of negates some aura synergies, and it's just a nice little defensive buff. Something to really remember. I know that personally I will forget this a lot, so make sure you keep that in the back of the mind while you're playing. Now they also have the Infiltrating Positions special rule, which allows them to deploy in the deployment phase anywhere on the table outside of your opponent's deployment zone, but they have to be more than 9 inches away from the enemy. So this can really synergize well with some specific Forge Worlds and stacking some rules to give these guys a really big charge right off turn 1, and potentially get that turn 1 charge to really take a bite out of your opponent turn right off the hop, right at the beginning of the game. They also have the Voices and the Code aura. Now, this is an interesting rule. Basically, it's -1 leadership for enemy units within 3 inches of them. This can stack really well. It's a cool little rule, and can really help if you play your cards right and you get these guys really close up to an enemy. Maybe then shoot one squad, do a lot of damage with maybe a ranged unit on a unit, and then mess with their leadership and make them fail some morale. So just keep in the back of your head, remember that they have it, because you never know when that -1 might come into play. Now, as far as keywords, they have this Skitarii, the core, and the Sicarian keywords. Those are the ones of note. They obviously have more in addition to that, but those are the ones that you're going to want to remember, because those are the ones that are going to synergize when it comes to character auras and stratagem use and things like that. As far as weapons are concerned, they come stock with the stub carbine and a power sword. Now, the stub carbine comes in at 18-inch range, pistol 3, strength 4, 0 AP, and damage 1. And they can sub these two weapons out. Oh, sorry, I should say the power sword is +1 strength, AP -3, and damage 1. But you're going to want to... I'm going to say 99% of the time you're going to want to sub these out, and that's just because why take a power sword on these guys when you can take Rust Stalkers and just do it a lot better. So I'm going to say strongly recommend subbing out for the Flechette Blaster and the Taser Goad. Now the Flechette Blaster is a 12-inch range, pistol 5, strength 3, and damage 1. It's a lot of shots. I mean, they are low strength, but I mean, this is going to be your chaff killer. It's going to be targeting weak enemy infantry. I mean, even against something that's maybe a little bit more elite, but like of the Eldar or Tau variant, you might be able to squeeze some wounds through on some lower toughness targets. Now, what you really want, though, is that Taser Goad. Now, the Taser Goad, it's plus 2 strength, AP minus 1, 1 damage, but each time an attack is made with the weapon, an unmodified hit roll scores 2 additional hits. 2 additional. That's crazy. The amount of hits that you can get with these guys with their 2 attacks base, and it does get better from here. Can't say I can find a reason, honestly, to take anything but that Taser Goad and the Flechette Blaster. So anyways, moving on from there, as far as Forge World synergies with these guys, my personal preference is always going to be leaning towards Mars, just because the ability to get canticles, I find that canticles are leaning a little bit more in the favor of melee-focused units. So the ability to double down on both the canticles and the Doctrine and Imperatives, it's just too good to pass up. So there's obviously going to be that draw. Now, at the same time, you're also getting access to the Wrath of Mars stratagem, and with the sheer volume of shots that this unit's able to pump out, you're almost guaranteed going to max out that 6 cap of mortal wounds. Also, their power level at a max size is going to be 8, which means you're always going to be using Wrath of Mars with 1 command point. Which means it's always going to be cheap, and it's always just going to be an easy, efficient way to dump some mortal wounds into something before maybe making the charge and finishing that unit off with some electrocution. From there, the Lucius Forge World is definitely appealing to me. It does increase their range on their weapons. I mean, going up to 15 inches or 18 inches, depending on your weapon choices. I mean, it's most likely going to be 15 because you're taking those Taser Goads, right? But it also gives them some teleport options. I mean, there's the Relic, which can get really crazy. I mean, the best target for that Relic is obviously going to be Castellan robots until that gets FAQ'd. If it does get FAQ'd in the future and we see some changes, then these guys might be the next best target with this ability to just shunt them up the table and get them stuck in. I mean, Electro Priests are also going to be a tough second choice, but these guys are high up there. They also have the other teleport abilities that they can gain. I mean, remember that they do have the core keyword as well. So Lucius is a possibility. Ryza, I mean, +1 to wound in melee is pretty awesome, especially on guys that are going to be swinging at strength 6, and there's ways to increase that. So giving them +1 to wound, great option. They also gain +1 to their charge rolls, and this again is going to coincide really well with trying to get that turn 1 charge if you're deploying. If your opponent's really aggressive and deploys right on the line of their deployment zone, and then you deploy and you kind of measure out, get outside of that 9 inches, you get the first turn, you get the turn 1 charge on these guys. Awesome, gravy. Moving from that, there is the potential of the custom Forge World. Now, I will say Metallica is an option, but I don't find that these guys, the options really lean into these guys. They're more focused on the types of weapons that they buff and everything. I just think if you're looking for the maximum efficiency for these guys, it's going to fit into those ones. But there are the options of custom Forge Worlds, although I don't think that they're going to outweigh the other options, but you could take the Luminary Suffusion one, which is the -1 strength and toughness within 3 inches. That could be pretty strong. The Accelerated Actuators, which is +1 AP for your melee weapons. Bringing these guys up to AP -2 could be really strong. yeah, I think they have a place, but you really have to be building. I find that with the custom forge worlds, you really have to be building your list very specifically and almost spam units that are going to benefit from those rules. Where with the other ones, they're more of a general, broader, and they're going to affect most of the stuff in your army already. So I mean, it's really up to you to explore and play test your way into figuring out what works best for you. In my opinion, top dog is going to be Mars for these guys. Now, as far as stratagems are concerned, they do have several stratagems that are specific to Sicarian units or Sicarian units. We're going to discuss all of the different stratagems that can affect them or buff them and make them just absolute melee monsters. So the assassin constructs, Sicarian unit with when it's selected to fight, if it charges, is charged, or heroically intervenes, so essentially first round of combat, fancy way of saying that, you're going to gain +1 attack. Now, putting these guys up to 3 attacks each with the exploding attacks, I don't have to sell that. That's an easy sell. Now, for machine superiority, that's a 1 command point stratagem, and it's used in the fight phase. You can buff these guys up to +1 strength. It's meant for a Skitarii core unit. So, I mean, these guys going up to strength 7. If you're swinging against toughness 6, now you're wounding on 3s. That's a big deal. And then if you're using something like if you're going the riser route, you can actually get these guys up to wounding on 2s in this case against toughness 6, which is huge. And there are ways to buff their strength. There's more ways to buff their strength if you're going the Mars route, but still really strong. Next up, we got to talk about the Circuitous Assassins. This is 1 command point, and at the end of your movement phase, a unit wholly within 9 inches of a board edge, they can be removed from the table, and they can be redeployed at the reserve step of your next movement phase. So this is an interesting little rule, because if you manage to finish off a unit, you're worried about their survivability, you're worried about a counter charge, you're worried about them getting shot off the table. If you're not in a good position to make a solid charge against the target that you want to, you can consider taking these guys off the table, redeploying them somewhere else, maybe to grab a late game objective, but just remember that they do count as destroyed if they're not on the table by the end of the game. So moving on from that, they do have the chain taser protocols. This is going to be the number 1 used stratagem for this unit in all competitive games. 1 command point, fight phase. In the fight phase, taser goads are now exploding on 5s. This is huge. When you combine it by popping a stratagem to give them +1 attack, you're now increasing that further. It's just unreal, the sheer volume of high strength AP -1 attacks you can pump out, and there are again ways to increase the AP value of their attacks. Now, I have to talk about 2 stratagems that are available to them. They're pre-game stratagems. The first one, the Host of the Intermediary. It's 1 command points. It's essentially allowing them to pick a Skitarii warlord trait, and you can give it to the Princeps in the unit. Now, the reason this is a big deal is because most of the Skitarii warlord traits have a secondary part to them where they have a range for their aura, and then they also can target units that are within or that have a data tether. These guys don't have a data tether, but it doesn't specify that the unit that's initiating has to have a data tether. It's the Princeps that's using it. Therefore, any of those units that you have that may be ranging ahead of your army or be in kind of awkward positions for you to be able to give them data tether or the data tether rule through some of the vehicles, the Iron Striders, Doom Crawlers, things like that, you may want to consider these guys as your choice in target for using the stratagem and giving them a Skitarii warlord trait. And there's several that I've kind of picked out that I think are the best options for these guys. There's the archived engagements, which allows them to fight first. Super strong. There's also the fire point telemetry one, which gives them, they counts as light cover, and then if they're on or in a terrain feature, they're gaining +1 to their save. This is big. My personal favorite, though, of all the options is going to be the Eyes of the Omniscient one. Now, what this is going to do is it allows you to re-roll your advances and your charge rolls. Really big, especially when you're stacking it. If you're playing Mars and you're using a canticle that allows you to roll 3d6 for the charge and take the 2 highest. If you can stack the reroll charges, you can see where a 9-inch charge is going to be almost a guarantee, or very close to. So yeah, that is a huge ability, and the fact that you can take it on the unit, pop it on that unit, or if the situation arises where it could be better used somewhere else on the table, target something that is within data tether range or does have a data tether. Very, very good. Can't say enough about those warlord traits, just for the flexibility of adding additional little special rules to your army and to your dynamic. The other one I got to mention is the Artifactorum. Now, 1 command point, allow a princeps to take a relic, but it's only from a specified list. My favorites, or the ones that I think are going to stand out the most, obviously, are the Omniscient Mask. What this is it's going to allow friendly Skitarii core units within 6 inches. Their melee attacks are going to score an additional hit on a 6. Yeah, it gets better. I can't believe they can actually pump out more attacks, but this is a prime candidate for that. The other one, which may be actually trumping it, which is the Temper Corpia, I'm probably butchering that, but select an enemy within 3 inches in the fight phase. That unit fights last. Now, if you don't want to target them with the Skitarii Warlord trait or spend the command point to give them the ability to fight first, this is a close second to that. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could stack that. You could take the exploding 6s in addition to your now exploding 5s because you're using the stratagem, and you see where this is going. The other option is the Skull of Elder Nicola. Now, I mean, mortal wounds to vehicles within 12 inches. It doesn't trump the other 2 options, so I think definitely towards the first 2, probably the second option as the best. Now, when we're discussing unit synergies for this unit, I have to say there's lots of characters that are going to synergize really well with these guys. Unfortunately, in their nature, they're going to be ranging far ahead of the majority of your army. They also don't have the data tether rule, which means the Skitarii Marshals special rules, we'll still discuss them, but they're going to be harder to kind of keep within range and to benefit these guys. So we'll discuss about the ways that we can go about doing that, but and what those buffs that they can provide or the synergies they can provide will do. But ultimately, I mean, with those 3 stratagems you have access to, if you're going to spend all 3 command points on a unit of 10, I'll tell you right now, they're with Doctrina's popped. If Mars, then you're getting the Canticles. You're probably not going to need a lot of synergy help with characters, but let's jump into that and see what we can do anyways. So obviously, if we're talking about the Dominus, the ability to reroll 1s, going to be a good one. I mean, if you are taking call, the ability to pop a reroll everything on them would be fantastic, but most of the times, again, you're not going to find these guys in the situation where they're going to be able to use it. As far as holy orders, if you are looking at holy orders to buff these guys, the Artisans is really the only one that stood out to me. That's +1 strength on their ranged weapons, buffing their pistols to 5 shots at strength 4. Again, no AP, single damage, so probably better places to be using this rule. Now, as far as the Marshal's concerned, he gives the reroll 1s to wound. If you take the relic, you can give him reroll 1s to hit and wound. This is really strong, but again, having him within range in the command phase, I mean, it'd be great if it was at the end of a movement phase because you could figure that out, but it is in the command phase. So it's going to be tough to get, and it's going to be tricky. But he does have the ability, the Control Edict. Now, what this does is it removes the negative effect from the Doctrina Imperatives. This is really strong if the rest of your army has a lot of shooting elements and you want to pop that +1 to hit in the shooting. But you don't want these guys to suffer the -1 to weapon skill because, I mean, you want these guys swinging away. So he can use this on a unit that's within data tether range. The only problem is these guys aren't going to be in data tether range a lot. They don't have a data tether, so you have to figure out a way to sort of throw this aura on them and give them that ability, or throw the data tether on them and give them that ability. So for this, I'm looking at the Lucius. I'm looking at the relic for Lucius. The ability to, basically, it's like a Veil of Darkness. It's turn 1. You can teleport these guys across the table turn 1, and you can take the character with them. Or you could buff these guys up and then shoot them across the table with another character that's going to allow them to get some rerolls. So there's a lot of ways to make this unit really scary, and then throw them across the tabletop outside of 9 inches, give them reroll charges, give them 3d6 charges from canticles, and you can see where these guys get a little nuts. And again, that is going to be a prime target for Castellan robots, that whole jumping across the table with Lucius. But I mean, these guys are going to be a close second, and they may win out if we get FAQs in the future saying that we can't do that with our robots anymore. So something to consider, and just play around with your ranges, figure out your positioning for the unit. Remember that they do move 8 inches. If you're getting second turn, you can be a little less aggressive with these guys, maybe deploy them mid-table or something like that on an objective, and then have them jump out once they've got buffed up from your characters. It's going to be tough. There's going to be ways to do it, but all in all, I think these guys are pretty good as it is with just the stratagem support and with the Doctrinas and the Canticles if you're Mars, and just there's tons of special rules to stack on these guys. So don't worry too much about getting your characters in. Maybe focus your characters' auras and abilities on other units that are going to lend to other strengths in your army, and keep these guys up the table, tasering things, make them dance, and have fun with this unit, guys. Great unit on the tabletop. Again, can't say enough. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Adeptus Mechanicus from Anvil of War Gaming. Thanks.
Sponsored by...
Praise be to the Omnissiah, and praise to you for hitting that subscribe button. Punch intro done. Get it? Shockingly. Because they have tasers.
Adeptus Mechanicus.